Nash with me. Wendy, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. I think I've had fewer changes than you have in the last couple of months. So this is fun. I do like to say that I'm in Australia and I'm calling from Gubby Gubby country. And the thing about being in a country which is colonized is to recognize that this is Aboriginal country is that there's a huge history of storytelling, connection. Everyone is related to every part, every place, every animal, every species. And people don't suddenly pop up out of nowhere. We have a long ancestry, and it's really, I think I found it such a beneficial thing for me to think about who are my ancestors. And now that you're in a different country
Denmark.
today and a different Denmark,
Mhm.
and the history of the Vikings, as well as, people left Denmark, Sweden, Norway to go into Minnesota. There's a huge Swedish population there. And yeah, so to kind of look at the history of our own countries and also our own personal history and those of our ancestors, your own history. So it's an interesting journey to do. So I would encourage you to do that. So here we are. You've come from somewhere, me too, and here we are. And let's see where we are in an hour.
Yes, and so just some technical things here. This is our roughly monthly meditation Q&A, and this is the fifth one. And last month, because of the big move, that I've never done anything like that before, but couldn't be more ready, and just actually went really smooth, and really look forward to it. We didn't have one, so we're having two this month. We'll have another one later. That's the plan anyway, right? And we thought, since this is Valentine, oh, and then welcome to those on Wisdom app, and then Insight Timer. So Insight Timer, you guys only get to see me. So if you want to see Wendy too, you can catch the replay, or you can hop over to YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and see if you want to see video, if you're into that kind of thing. But February is kind of known in some circles for, Valentine's Day, right? And I'm not really actually that familiar with Saint Valentine, or the whole spiel and the story or whatever. And I've been jaded in the past from, I don't know, not having being in a partnership, and just thinking it's overly commercialized and stuff. So, but my personal opinions and feelings aside on that, I thought what we could all talk about that'd be beneficial and helpful here is the Brahmaviharas and just love in general. you know Love, and before I say anything much about that, love, I love that word, obviously, but it can also mean to say I love ice cream, and that's not what we're talking about here, right? We're not talking
Yeah.
about amplifying our personal preferences so much. But the Brahma Viharas, why don't I just throw it to Wendy and have her talk about the Brahma Viharas instead of me, right away.
Yeah. Look, just before we go there, I've just had a look on the YouTube and it says waiting for integrated presence.
Uh-oh.
So I'm not sure what's happening on YouTube. Just putting it out there.
Yeah, I
We
guess
are highly professional, smooth. So I think
it says, "Oops, where seems like one of the streams is having connection issues. Stand by. We're trying to restore the connection." Isn't that interesting?
okay.
I wonder if there's
Okay.
actually a human being trying to do that. I doubt it, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's a human. I don't think there's anybody
I
human in the
know,
whole of
exactly.
Google.
Right.
So, that's an interesting thing about love and the Brahmaviharas. So let's talk about the Brahmaviharas because there's four of them: love, compassion, joy, and peace. And I guess there are various translations of them. And here we are, Valentine's Day, and that's a big one. And many people, like you said, it's quite difficult. Romance and feeling like you're single, you've been jilted, you've had a shitty relationship. And I think that when we have our family histories, attachment style that really touches into it, people have more connection with a pet often than they do with other members of their family. But I think that what I have learnt with this journey is really love for yourself. And that sounds so, like, I don't know, cringy or something, but I the way I see love is actually just kindness for yourself. Because if you're not very kind to yourself, you're no good to anyone. If you're criticizing yourself, all you do is criticize everybody else. I knew a woman, a friend, and an acquaintance really, and she said, "Oh, I've met this new fellow." And I said, "Oh, great. What's he like?" "Ah, I can't fault him." It's like, wow, hard did you try? Please try harder to fault him more. It's just such a, we have this idea that somehow they've got to be perfect. We've got to be perfect. And all this is so, well, not only unrealistic, but unhelpful to being kind. So that's the first one. So compassion is one which we talk about, which is really, I the way I like to think about it is slightly different. I think the Dalai Lama has this, that is more about, we are in this together. And I guess love is like that too. We are in this together. I'm not helping you, you're not helping me. We are just sort of, I'm not happy because you're not happy, but also I'm not able to feel. Yeah, so there's something about being really connected in that space. Joy, that was one that I really struggled with. I was like, wow, that took me a long time to get the hang of. And I think with that one, it's good to ask, what stops you feeling joyful in daily life these days, at the moment? And I felt really guilty because I felt like there's all these, horrible things on the planet, and all of that is true. But being a wet blanket is no good to anybody either. So finding that sweet spot between being a Pollyanna, cold-hearted, steely person and being a miserable git. So that one there, and um, and I think equanimity. I think peace, space, really the sense of being in a larger place. I started off with my acknowledgement of country, which is saying I come from a larger place, I come from a larger space. And I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge. Yeah. So that's my take on the of the, I call them the four immeasurables. So when I teach people, I use the four immeasurables because they're immeasurable in how many times, how many ways you can practice and how far it spreads. So I like the term immeasurables, which is out of the Tibetan, rather than divine abodes, because it's like,
Yes.
weird and
Yeah.
un
Yes, it's a good point. I like the sublime abidings. That's one I like. The immeasurables are great too. I keep forgetting that because these are boundless states. There's no limit, right? You're not going to run out of kindness. You don't have to worry about enough going around or stealing someone else's, or I have to get more of this, and there's only a limited supply like we're led to believe in life, right? There's all these limited resources and we have to be in competition to get them. Well, these are the exact opposite. They are immeasurable. It's like the vast ocean. I guess maybe someone could catalog it, but by the time you start cataloging it, it's changed so much. It's unfathomable. It's really hard to measure, and so there is no limit on these. And so I'll just give my quick rundown. And folks have listened to me before; they've probably heard a lot of this, but these are such lovely flavors of love too. If somebody, this is what we can talk about. You can be more specific, and in some regards, talking about love does it a disservice in some senses. But now this is actual tangible things we can put words to. Um, which here I'll take another short tangent because I think it's in the Greek, some of the ways of love are like a familial love between family, the love between a child and their parents. Then we have romantic love, and then we have like a friendly love, or friends. And then there's one that's called like was it agape, which is like the ultimate or something like that. And those are I find those somewhat helpful. But these actually, it's not necessarily being to being, although we do practice towards being. This is more centered on the kind of the situation, and which one of these is most appropriate for just about every occurrence in life, right? So we meet in general folks with loving kindness or this unstoppable friendliness. I love that translation too. This well wishing, and even at the base level, I think just an absence of ill will. That's like the baseline of this. When ill will is absent, then that's loving kindness. I mean, at least in today's climate, I feel too. So it's not like it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing, but authenticity is really important when doing formal practices. But we'll get to those in a little bit. Compassion for me, I like this one of this is acknowledging pain, because no one gets through this human life without experiencing pain, right? It's also usually the psychological things we add on top that cause the suffering and the stress. But when we acknowledge our pain and another's pain, that's a huge step. A lot of people are acting out just to have their pain acknowledged, and they don't acknowledge it themselves. Um, and then there's also I'll do the self kindness, self compassion here, but on compassion, the formal phrases I use, acknowledging it and then showing care. I care about it because I could acknowledge it just to kind of wanted to get it to go away. But when I really bring whatever care is available, I mean, maybe I'm too old fashioned here, but a masculine care is quite different than a feminine care traditionally, right? It doesn't mean we care more or less. They just oftentimes they express in different ways, and just whatever care I'm able to bring to it, and then a sincere wish for that pain to end, right? And for it to release, and for who's going to be free, because yes, while we're all in it together, we need empathy to connect, to even recognize and acknowledge that pain. But at some point, when do I get dragged under by the pain? And now, I mean, suffering, and now there's two people suffering instead of one, right? So, and then just as actionable compassion in action, I like just going up to someone every once in a while and say, "Hey, is everything okay? Can I help in any way? Is there anything I can do?" So that way, it's not like me forcing some kind of high and mighty thing on someone else. It's giving them first is just checking in, seeing what's going on with them, and then having them have the idea of how they might need help or something like that. And then this second one of mudita, right? This is a rejoicing, and of course, this is the most challenging one too. Maybe you can go into more details about this, but I like the translation rejoicing. Some of the other translations for it are altruistic joy, but that one, it's like, how can joy not be altruistic? What's what is, where's the greedy joy? And I guess there is getting, the Schadenfreude where you can get joy at other people's expense. That's
Yeah.
not what we're talking about. That's really distorted. But I like this vicarious joy, living through,
Mm.
like the Dalai Lama said something like, how many billions of people are there? So if I can be happy for their happiness, it increases my chance of happiness by like a billion, or however many billion folks are saying is on the earth now. And then the equanimity. This is like the crown jewel of the Brahmaviharas, but it's also kind of like the underlying and overarching one that goes with with the other ones. And I like this, the grandparently love. So it's the ones that kind of seen it all, done it all, and they want to help, or we want to help out. Um, with the way we can, but we also realize that we can't live someone else's lives for them, right? I can't. Am I going to be stepping on their path and stepping on their journey? Sometimes I just have to say, you have to make your own decisions here. I'm here for you, but I can't be involved in every moment of your life all the time. And it's not indifference, and that's the near enemy of it. So these have near and far enemies. We can talk about those as well. But yeah, it's like this even keel. Peace is a great translation. I love that one for it too. Yeah. So I think that's enough to say for my part for now for these. Yeah.
I was thinking as you were describing those, I was thinking about an insight I had this week, this month. I have a difficult relationship with my mother. She says a lot of unkind things. It's just her habit, her upbringing, and and lack of awareness and lack of curiosity about how it arises. And she knows it has an impact, but she doesn't have the curiosity to go, maybe I could do something about it. So it's quite painful because I'm the receiving end of that. And I don't want to be, and I want to be close to my mother, but it's painful, and it's painful for both of us. The other day, I was catching up with friends for coffee on a Sunday morning at the markets, and there was a new lady, and I was sitting next to her, and she, maybe I'm stereotyping, so please don't take it that way, but she's white South African, raised on a farm, hard, really, really hard, and she had had cancer. Her daughter had been killed. I later found out that it was to do with the truck driver crashed into her, and she was on life support. And the parents had to decide that no more. So, like, they couldn't go ahead with it. So it was completely awful. And my mother's done the same thing. My younger sister was born with a terminal illness, and 18 months later she died. And they had to get to a decision, and this is in the 60s, to let her go. So it was very interesting talking with this lady, where I just felt this hardness, real hardness in the body, in the psyche, in the mind. The whole body felt incredibly hard. And I just left a little bit like, get me away from that woman. I just, what is that? And then in the coming day, I was like, oh my gosh, she's completely traumatized. Absolutely, from her bones outwards, from the marrow outwards, deeply traumatized. Farming life is hard. It's really, really hard. And she says she had to leave South Africa because of her safety, because after the transition from apartheid, a lot of South Africans, white South Africans, have landed up here in Australia. And so she felt unsafe. Her daughter had been killed. She had been part of that process for her daughter to die. And she had arrived here, and her visa conditions don't allow her to have any social security. So most Australians have social security, but she doesn't have it. And she's 70, and her husband is dementing, and she is the carer, and they have to live kind of week by week, really tough. And the next day, I could feel myself soften into that trauma. And it was a very interesting experience, because then I was like, oh, my mother is actually just really traumatized. And I've never thought, I've done a lot of therapy. I've done a lot of meditation practice. Loving kindness for difficult people is huge, huge part of my practice. And so it was very interesting to go, I finally have compassion for my mother. I'm 56. But it's very hard because she says so many horrible things. And I just thought, wow, she wouldn't allow herself to have any softness because she doesn't have that. She hasn't got that training. But it was like sitting next to this woman whose body was so hard. I knew I was familiar with that hardness. Then I could open to the love that I have for my mother, because I saw that actually I had an extra bit of information about the level of trauma that this woman had experienced, and my mother too has experienced that. I'm sure my mother has complex PTSD, and I'm sure this woman did too. So it was it's interesting to explore that in this, and I hadn't thought to bring it until just now. It was an interesting point of clarity. We can think that we have to try to love, but in some way I had to stop trying to love and just allow myself to receive this other woman first, before I could kind of move over into that other space. It was an interesting journey. So and that's a different form of love and a different form of compassion.
It really is, and these teachings of these mirrors, I've had this happen before. Those of us who are, fairly empathic and sensitive, it's really challenging to be around this, right? Because as we meditate more and more, our sensitivity level increases, right? And so what once was no big deal to us, now it can really seep in deep, and we can feel the pain deeply of others. And then sometimes there are certain things that we don't see in others too. Sometimes the closer we are to people, the harder it is to see. So when we can kind of get some distance, and then you actually, I do this a lot of times. I see different traits of other people, of someone and someone else, and then these connections come like that. It's really amazing. And yeah, a lot of times too. Um, what's helped me is knowing that however I want to relate or not, the other person, it's their journey, right? It shows us where they're at on their journey, and no matter how much I want to be able to relate or bring what I want to a relationship, a lot of times, it's just yeah, I don't know how to put that. It we, these practices help. That's the main thing. They're for us individually the most. And Wendy talked about at the very beginning how self love, and yeah, at a certain time it does seem like cringing or even a consolation prize at best. But we cannot really express love to another in the ways that we want unless we have it for ourselves, right? What is this saying that others can only relate to us as deeply as they've met themselves? So if someone hasn't met themselves deeply, they're not going to be able to meet us on the same level that we've met ourselves at too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. We have some people listening in. So, a couple of things on the technical. YouTube still isn't up. So, just giving you a heads
And
up on that.
that might be because I changed my password. So hopefully
Ah,
that's what's coming to mind, and that's my bad on that. So we'll see.
okay.
Hmm.
And so that's one. And the other is we have some people listening. I don't know how many people we've got. 24 meditators here. So to you, if you are listening, or you are listening, we've certainly got the icon on. Please ask us a question, because it's really nice to have some engagement from people who are just hanging in there, and no one will crowd your space because we hardly ever get questions. So trust me, it'll be fine.
Yes, and if you just put a note in there if you don't want us to use your name or anything like that, and maybe some ideas for some questions. And actually, I don't know about the YouTube thing; that could be wrong too. We'll figure it out there. I'll figure it out later. So the Brahmaviharas, yeah. What do you guys do? You have any questions about love? It seems kind of funny, but I mean, like how do people know they're being loved? How do they know? How does one know that they're showing themselves adequate love? And this thing about we find we're blaming others, or we're blaming ourselves, and then we find out we shouldn't blame ourselves, so then we blame ourselves for blaming ourselves, right? This stack upon stack. And I want to go back to safety though after you say what you want to say, Wendy, because that is not only for just about everybody, especially those on a spiritual path. A lot of our practices and all
Mm.
this is for safety. So, and that comes into all the trauma and stuff as well. But you were getting ready to say.
Yeah, I was. I think what I hadn't realized for a long time. So I always thought that I had to love others. So it was me to another. And then I realized actually the best form of love is noticing what the acts of kindness and care that others have for me, whether it's opening a door, making a cup of tea, um, just even your girlfriend buys food in the you mean you're in Denmark now, so she's doing a huge amount for you. She can read the food labels in the supermarket, and you can't do that yet. So, and some of the pronunciation in Danish is very sort of unfamiliar. It's difficult to distinguish sometimes because it's such a guttural language. And I think one of the easiest ways to love someone is to receive their acts of kindness, to acknowledge it. So things like we have breakfast downstairs it's summer for us, so downstairs in the garden, and we take the tray down, and I then start watering the garden, and he goes upstairs, and depending on how much time he's got, he might only have time to do one dish, or maybe not even do a dish before he has to rush out the door. But the fact that he even took the tray upstairs is an act of love, and it's something to appreciate, because otherwise I've got to do it. And I've come from this very critical family system, and so for me to look for kindness in others helps me feel it's like training my mind in love. So we have a little tropical love land kind of thing, and that ABBA song is one of my favorites. I was 8 in 1974, so I just always loved that little song. And 1974 was the heyday of ABBA. So, and I think it really creates this amazing thing, because when we when we um, when we say something, when we point out the fault of another, actually it makes us unsafe. So you wanted to talk about safety. And I used to think that getting angry and speaking my mind was going to make me safe, because that was an act of kind of self-preservation. But what I did at one point is I actually noticed how seldom it made me safe, and how frequently it made me unsafe. So that's my little segue over to safety, Josh.
Yes, and the armoring you talked about, the farmer gal put on before. A lot of people think that armoring is, and it does at some times, but then nothing else can get through.
Yeah.
Love and kindness. And one of these things I've noticed is it calms the nervous system. It allows it to unwind and relax, and can feel how it feels in the body. And these other 2 points, I think, if there were to be 2 more Brahmaviharas, I would say yes, this gratitude. And that's what Wendy's talking about. She's grateful for these acts of kindness, and that's also, the mindfulness comes hand in hand with that, because sometimes we don't even notice. With the mindfulness practice, we can notice more and more. And so instead of looking at the world from a default of, oh crap, not this again, or just defaulting to negativity all the time, which I'm not saying blow off negativity all the time. They can do the opposite, where we don't want to see anything negative whatsoever. There's that type
Yeah.
of person too. But I know for me, I was jaded. And before I started these practices, I mean, I was shut down too. And then I would lash out. But it was just this default of, and it's just amazing how much I've changed. It's just, these people are stupid. This is my default outlook. These people are stupid. Doesn't matter that I live in the States either. So, and that they're doing it wrong. And why are they doing that? And I'm just this sense of superiority I had sometimes, right? I mean, it seems so ridiculous now, because it was, to think of that, but that actually came from a deep sense of pain, right?
Yeah.
That projection of that out there. So now it can change our view of the world into a more skillful and wise view. Like, yes, we all are suffering, including me. Well, suffering might be a strong word, but we all experience stress, and we all want to be happy. So these other 2, so that's one that really helped me, though, and that dragged me out of holes, was forgiveness. Because we can't force forgiveness. It will come when it comes. But there are formal practices for forgiveness too. 3-way, like asking another for forgiveness, whether they're there or not. Asking them to forgive me, and then forgiving myself. Being raised in a Christian background, it was always forgiveness had to come from outside myself. Well, that's great too, but there's also an option to forgive myself. Let me balance that with the resolve not to do it again. The unwholesome, unskillful, unwise acts that harmed me and harmed others. To, yes, get forgiveness, but then resolve that. Okay, I know where that leads. That's not going to help me or anybody else. Yes.
Can
Okay.
I put in something about forgiveness? Because I think it's okay. So the Ken McLeod did a really fantastic. Do you subscribe to Tricycle? No.
I read articles here and there from them. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But not.
They have. I really like it. It gives you one movie a month, and you get. I think it's like, I can't remember how much it is. It's like $60 US, a year, and I get one free movie a month, which I really like, and all sorts of different aspects of Buddhism. So it's quite nice to read all that. And some of the articles sometimes are really amazing, and you get a little daily snippet. I probably shouldn't be promoting Tricycle, but I really like
No,
it.
it
So
is a
that's
really
just
good
my own.
in their archives online are really good. I mean, especially for people starting out, very clear, very straightforward, but not shallow either. So
Yeah, and they have amazing teachers. So, but Ken MacLeod, who's a very senior Tibetan Buddhist translator, and he said forgiveness in the Buddhist sense is not the same as forgiveness in the Christian sense. And forgiveness, so if you know, like the word in English, Danish, German, French. So in French, it's pardonner, you know, pardonner, so forgive. In Swedish, it's tillgiva, so it's to give. So it's the same, yeah. And I've checked with Danish and people, it's exactly the same, and Dutch and other places in German. And it's actually to do with indebtedness. So it's quite a different structure altogether. So what forgiveness is about is saying, you have wronged me and I have a right to claim punishment for that. And forgiveness is saying, I forego that right to punish you. So that's what forgiveness means, actually. And when that happened, it's like, okay. And that's not the same as saying, I resent that you hurt me, which is, and I'm angry and I'm hurt, you know, like that's a different thing. And then you have to go into the resentment. So it's quite a different thing. I've been working with forgiveness, you know, because my mum's so difficult, and other family members as well, and lots of other difficult, painful situations in my life. And the thing about forgiveness, that I saw a movie, and it was actually a Christian woman, and it was actually about South Africa. It was to do with post-apartheid South Africa. And if you're aware of South African politics, there's the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was put into place after Nelson Mandela stepped up, and he wanted to create amnesty for a few people. So in post-apartheid South Africa, there was a black man who blew up the pub where a white woman's daughter was drinking, and the daughter was killed. And she was clearly very distressed, and she said, I want to know who this person was who created that. Anyway, so there was this whole legal thing, and he said, I will come forward and meet you as a person away from the media. I'll come forward. And actually, she wanted to know his perspective. And he said, I did it because that I felt that there hadn't been enough recognition of the harm. And people were using amnesty to not take responsibility. It was like a skirting out. And the white generals, the white police had been brutal, and they didn't own up to that. And he said, I was just really angry that these generals got away with it. And she said, and this is really important, she said, I had wondered about that. So he had come forward. She had said, I want to meet him. He had come forward. She had gone, yeah, that's right. I had wondered about that. And then he came forward, and they met. And then she said, are you Christian? And he said, I'm not Christian, but I am spiritual. And they met. And now they work together on reconciliation and forgiveness around the world with Palestinian Israel, all that sort of stuff. But I don't believe that you can do forgiveness unless both parties are coming together. And she forwent, if that's a word, the right for him to be punished. So he didn't go into jail. They instead worked together on forgiveness around the world. So that's a kind of a roundabout kind of way, but I think it's a really important thing to talk about with forgiveness, because we can think that it's not about resentment. And I see so much spiritual bypassing about forgiveness, and people saying, "Oh, I came to terms with my father. He behaved badly when I was a child," and it's like so thick with bypassing and denial. You
Yeah.
can really feel that rig. And basically, what she's saying is, I'm still really pissed off and resentful of my dad died, and I'm not going to give up my right to be resentful. So sorry about that long
No,
description.
this is a really important topic, I feel, because I've come into different aspects of this, including that as well. And I thank you so much for the etymology of this word too, because yeah, I guess people don't, and I didn't really even realize the underlying. So if it's like that, first, if that word was created for that intent, then that's going to follow that word, at least, or subconsciously, unconsciously throughout it. And it just goes to show how much of a debt-based society we are, how many people
Yeah.
are in debt, but this is a different type of debt we're talking about. And then when most people, maybe there's a cognitive dissonance here because most people don't think of it like that, obviously, right? And so the resentment thing, I think that's what we're focusing on here. So maybe we need to come up with a better English word for what we're talking about here. But yeah, the resentment thing, that's a key element of this as well. And I just want to say that sometimes, I mean, when we talk about perpetrators too, in this case,
Mm.
there's not so much resentment as just kind of, well, there's these two protectors, Hiri and Ottapa, right? The guardians of the world. Well, there's this deep sense of shame and regret for one's actions that they've done sometimes, right? So that's where you have to reach out to someone to ask them to forgive the me, because I've come to wake up, or just I'm just using me, right? Because it's not necessarily I've been the victim, I've been the victimizer. And then we get these cycles of victim victimizer, where one will get victimized and then turn on to be the victimizer, and just goes on and on and on. So this is what I'm trying to address here with this, and it's kind of a beautiful happy ending or consolation. The story you mentioned, I've heard
Mm.
similar stories where someone shot their um, their their uh, their offspring, right? And it's coming to court, and somebody might know the exact story I'm talking about. But instead of wanting, full justice to have them locked away, and like people are really, and they have every right to be, right? But this woman, she wanted to get to know the one that killed her son, and I forget all the different kind of stories that went on, like how she got to know him and stuff like that. And the guy that killed her son, or whoever it was really taken aback that she would want to do something like this. And it was just really profound to hear this story. A few other things here with this is, yes, this is really important, that this does not excuse their actions. So if there's abuse, just because we forgive someone or ask for forgiveness, that's the main takeaway here before. And also, I did talk about this earlier, allowing yourself not to forgive. So those on the spiritual journey beat themselves up. Oh, I should forgive this person,
Mhm.
but no, no, you don't have to, it
Mhm.
needs to be authentic, and it'll come at the right time when it's ready. So no need to beat yourself up if you can't forgive. And it does not excuse the action, because if it did, well, then that's not going to stop these cycles of victim victimizer cycles that go on and on and on.
Yeah. So I was thinking about something that Elizabeth Matters Numgell, who's in Colorado, and um, she was married to a Tibetan master, Dzige Kongtrul Rinpoche, and she just says, sometimes my heart is like a dry seed. And she says that. And if you see the Dalai Lama, when he's talking with the local Tibetans, it's like, come on, don't be so stupid. Get your act together. And he's really like, with the Westerners, he's just like, he's this lovely grandpa figure. But with the locals, he's like completely, come on, hurry up. So, he's impatient and mean. So there you go. I mean, I don't speak Tibetan. I don't know what he's saying. So yeah.
Well, that's right. It's just like some guys and their buddies too, like their close buddies. They don't give them a lot of slack, but then they can be really kind to newcomers or things like this too. So yeah, It's really interesting. But were you going somewhere with that? I guess I'm missing the disconnect between how the Dalai Lama treats that treatment, and then also the dry seed. So I guess I'm missing something here with that.
So you said, don't give yourself a hard time for the fact that you can't forgive. Sometimes your heart is like a dry seed, and that
Yes,
is
exactly.
just the reality. I just had a client before here, and he's about to go overseas, and he's going, I'm seeing all my friends, and I'm catching up with everybody before I head over to Europe for a month or something, and I'm just not really present. I was like, yeah, of course you're not present because you've got a million things on your mind and you're not. Give yourself some slack. And I think there is, like so we've got here next to on the screen, we've got the Kalyanamitta Sutta, which is about, that we were practicing before. And I was looking at that and I felt really burdened by the intensity of it and how, you're supposed to be like this and this is what should be done by a who's skilled in goodness. And I'm thinking, well, either I'm good or I'm horrible because like I I don't fit all that all the time, you know. And so does that make me a really bad person or whatever? So I
It's a good
yeah.
point, Wendy. I like to look at it as like an aspiration. Okay. I'm nowhere near the Buddha, but I can be inspired by this, right? This is, and then there's practices, it's not like, well, I could never see myself getting anywhere close to this. So I just need to throw it all away and just, oh, that's a nice poem or something like that, which it is. It's such lovely language to me. But knowing that, yeah, when I'm comparing myself to the Buddha and, I'm not going to be there right away. This is going to take a time and practice, and it can be. I look at it as more like an inspiration, but that's right. I mean, yeah, this stuff. We'll see how kind of beautiful and heart wrenching and intense, but also at the same time relaxing and relieving. It's only two short paragraphs, but would you like me to read the first one, or would you like to say
Yeah,
anything?
yeah. Let's do it. We've talked about it. We've got 40 people online now, and please feel welcome to post a question. I can't
Mhm.
see anything. I don't know whether Josh, you've got anything on your side, but I can't see any questions
I
on my
haven't seen
side.
any questions either, one of the things is I'm not present on the Insight Timer screen. I'm looking at
Okay.
Wendy on another screen, so I apologize if there's some kind of weird disconnect with me on Insight Timer, and then people hearing Wendy's like disembodied voice on my rig microphone through my laptop speaker. So it's not ideal, but I'm glad you guys are here and listening. So this is translated by the Amaravati Sangha. And yeah, anyway, so this is one of my favorite translations of this. And I think Spirit Rock put this out on a mailer that they did that I cut
I'm
out.
actually I'm gonna post it in
Sure.
the
Yeah, the
comment
link.
actually. So
Yeah.
if anybody wants to read it, you can either say it along as you want to go.
Yeah, good idea,
Um,
Wendy.
oh damn, I can't.
Oh,
It
that's
says I've got
okay.
to log in, so
I can do it right now.
okay. I may as
And
well log in.
well, I've got it there. So that's the link. If it shows up in the link, sometimes, yeah, Insight Timer blocks links. So let me see if I can get around that really briefly here by doing a.
I've done it. I've done it. I've done it.
Okay.
So
Is it showing
and
up? Does anybody see the link in the chat?
I can see that it is in the chat.
Okay.
And by the way, you're completely frozen on screen. So
Oh, no. Okay. I'm going to put
we've
it
got
in one
44
more time.
minutes.
Okay. All right. YouTube up and running, C says. Well, good. Okay.
Oh,
And
great.
so
Okay.
hopefully the link's in there. You guys can follow along, or you can just go to Insight Timer. I'm sorry, access to insight.com and type in, I think Metta Sutta, or just search Metta Sutta. And, okay. So here we
See,
go.
see, see, do you, yeah. So
Sure.
see if you have a question, post it, and then we'll respond to that after we've read the verses.
Yes. Anything. It doesn't even have to be on topic. It can be about your meditation practice, whatever you'd like. Any kind of question. Okay. So this is the Metta Sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness. And this is an English translation, obviously. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease.
That's a bit of a tall order, but I'll go on my bit. So my is like, yeah, so be comfortable with the fact that you are not able to do that. There you go. So here's the second verse. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a child protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness all over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So,
It's so beautiful. And to pick up where we were talking about safety. And so this is a little background here. There was one point in the suttas where the Buddha, the historical Buddha, there was these monks practicing, or maybe he even told them to go practice in this wilderness area, but they were getting assailed with these, these different spirits and tree spirits and all these different beings and stuff. And so they couldn't stay on their meditation. And the Buddha came along and said, well, they feel threatened. You're in their space, you're invading their territory basically, and you're not really giving them, they're kind of scared of you. They're trying to chase you off. And he supposedly gave them this. So this predates the Buddha. I guess he learned this some other time is what it's said, right? And he told them to practice this. And my phrases are, if anyone doesn't know, one of the traditional ways to do this is you bring a being to mind, and then an image in one's mind in practice, and then you kind of tap into the emotions or how you feel, the felt sense of it, and then repeat phrases. So mine are, may you be safe internally and externally. So yes, this wishing in gladness and in safety, that line there, right? And then this notion of may you be happy and joyful, this well wishing. May you be healthy and strong. So this, this it's not kind of like a limp dish rag here. You also want to be healthy and strong because you're wanting the best for your child, your only child. I mean, and then may you live with ease. That's the big one, right? It's repeated twice here. That you don't have to, worry about this armoring. You can relax and be in your own skin and let your nervous system, unwind. And the safety is too. This is also known as a protective meditation because other beings can sense that we're not a threat to them. They don't have to be on guard. They can sense that we have their best interest in mind, right? And we're not doing this for selfish purposes, ideally, right? And then this notion of may you realize awakening and be free. That's another one of my phrases. And so that goes towards the end here. Well, this is not just, kind of lovey-dovey, feel good kind of Buddhist thing. No, this supports full awakening and full release, liberation, freedom from suffering, freedom from stress. So yeah, it's such a I look at it more as an inspiration instead of I'm falling short of it, right? Because yes, well, obviously we're all falling short of it, but yeah, it's this lovely thing here.
See, that probably says something about the difference of it. You kind of are going, well, that'd be a nice idea. That's the goal. Whereas I go, well, that just seems so impossible. I'll just give up now. And I guess I was sort of looking at it. I was thinking, oh, I feel so like why don't they say something like, yeah, about speech, that you see that life is funny and ludicrous, that you have a lightness, that you are joyful in your heart. Like that's not there. So I that's the only one thing I
That's a
find.
really good question. Yeah, let's see. What where how could I um, so, well, if you cherish all living beings, kindness all over the world, I think, yeah, the lightheartedness to be people, to put them at ease. I think that's where the lightheartedness comes. So if that's the best way to put myself and others at ease, I think that's great because we all know how humor and laughter, it just cuts through everything and it kind of breaks up this dense energy, right? And at the same time, humor, often the good stuff, points to something as true that nobody's really said before, but it points out the truth in a way that's not really super intense. It's something that everybody can relate to, right? And on all different levels. So I think humor is a great way to put people at ease. And even small talk, sometimes there's this frivolous talk, but sometimes, small talk's needed to kind of cut that tension in the air for a little bit, put people at ease. And like I say, this is as far as being too daunting, too much to live up to, just an absence of ill will. I mean, that's as long as we have an absence of ill will, and not only, this, even before that, probably I would be safe to guess that most everybody here hasn't killed another human being today. But not everybody on earth can say that. And how many times do we take that for granted, right?
Mm. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
interesting, like about killing people and love. Have you seen the movie The Work, where there's these lay people, guys, go into Folsom Prison? So there are a whole lot of prisoners who are kind of in these, I guess, self-help groups in Folsom Prison, and there's the lay community who kind of come in, and they do it, I guess, every year or every second year.
yes, I work
And
with a buddy of mine, Denny, was in a group in San Francisco, right? Is it Folsom in San Francisco, or which one am I? Yes, with the big Zen practitioners. Oh, yes, it's all the lovely things I hear out of there. Please continue. Yeah.
so there's a movie you can watch about, it's called The Work, and there are these like big guys, and the love that they have. I mean, they'd be really scary. If I met them, I'd be like completely, scared, run the other way. But they were just right there.
At first, Wendy, at first, I think you would.
Yeah, I mean, I'd want to have context around it. Let me put it that way. I mean, there's a lot of things that I cross the street. I will cross the street if there's a man walking on the same side of the footpath. I will cross the street. It's nothing to do with anyone's color. I just always cross the street. That's my personal safety thing.
Well, yeah, the
Um,
sidewalks really aren't that wide, so but I do
yeah,
that sometimes with both genders, by the way, or
yeah,
whatever gender we
yeah.
want to assign. So
Because I know that's a topic, but so what was I saying? These guys are really able to meet. So it's a movie, and there was this one guy, and he kind of didn't have any big issues, and he was like a normal white middle class kid who just had a bit of dad stuff. Guys, they're always wanting approval from their dads. That just, it's such a big thing, and men somehow, for some reason, fathers don't want to tell their sons, gee, I'm proud of you, or I really approve of the way that you do things. For some reason, guys just don't go there. I'm not sure what that is. And but these guys who had dealt with huge amounts of abuse and violence were able to meet this white guy in the middle class background, and just really be with him. It was really a beautiful act of love. And it's an interesting film because there are people who are working through stuff, and and the love that the black guys, or the, I think they're all black, not all of them, the prisoners have for the lay people is really beautiful to see. So that's quite a nice, rich way of looking at love.
It is, and I just like in general the prison as a metaphor for the we've got the inmates who are in the inside and that whole culture, but in a way aren't we all prisoners to something, right, until we're completely awakened? Like what are the things that we beat ourselves up for, that wish that we're clinging to, the things where we don't have freedom from suffering yet? In a way we're a prisoner in a sense to those, of course metaphorically, and it's not to say that well, what they're, so not for another
It's not
comparison.
comparable. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, but it's just like in a way we all have something we're working on, right? And it's definitely not to the same extent as what they're doing there, and then not to downsize it at all. And actually, there's so much inspiration that can be drawn from those stories. The San Francisco Zen Center, I know, is really involved in that type of outreach work, and it's amazing the things I hear is coming out of there. But, yeah.
Yeah. So we're coming up to the end, Josh.
Yep.
So I want to just say thanks to C for keeping an eye out on the IT stuff, and
Yes.
it's working, and the suggestions. And I
Mhm.
didn't go exit and log in and log out. I just felt like I ran out of time. But I will think about doing that next time. Thank you very much for your suggestion.
Mhm.
What would closing words for the sort of like the next few minutes? What are you? What's you're in this new relationship
Mhm.
in Denmark, in a new country. So there's a lot of new things happening.
Yes, and I guess we can, since I'm on. Go ahead. You were saying.
Yeah. So in terms of love,
Mhm.
compassion, joy, and equanimity,
Mhm.
how are you applying that in this two very new situations
Ooh,
where disorientating?
this is so juicy, right? People love talking about relationships, and I know. So maybe we'll save that for the next time, because I really want to kind of sit with that and know what's appropriate and not to say about that when it comes to another. But for myself, yeah, it's. You know what? I think and then I think I'm gonna just delay this, because I can plug my next Insight Timer event where I'm going to go into this and talk about, just for the short amount of time I've been here, 2 weeks or so, of the things I've noticed in Denmark in general, about all the things, which is probably premature, and I reserve the right to change those later, right? But then how to apply those to the meditation practice. So it's just not my travel log, which was it's okay enough, right? But if I can use those as qualities to boost and enhance our own meditation practice, I want to look at it from that. And then once I explore that, then I think I'll have a better ground. And once I sit with this of how to explore these more in relationship, and what Wendy said in the context of, putting all my stuff into storage and not having a place to go when I come back. And, but I think we'll pick this up again next month with Love and the Brahmaviharas, because it's a huge topic, and I love how Wendy brought kind of personal anecdotes here and her own practice into it, as well as these inspiring real life stories, which I know people can really connect to, and I can too. I just happen to not be able to relate them as nowhere near as good as Wendy. So we make this good host and co-host, or dual co-hosting this. So yeah, yep. But I guess to recap some of the things, safety, forgiveness, gratitude, the four Brahmaviharas, kind of our own, our Wendy's experience with her mom and how this is practiced, and some of my relations of, how I used to view the world as well. So, yep. So if you guys have any experiences to share with this too, it doesn't necessarily have to be questions. You totally forget to tell people to feel free to just chat amongst yourselves, right, in the chat room, and we can draw on that too, sharing experiences too. It doesn't necessarily have to be questions, or I can frame them in questions for Wendy and I too, from just how you all would like to share your experiences with love and the Brahmaviharas and beyond.
Well, we had 68 meditators at one point. It's now gone down to 64 because I
Oh,
guess it's dinner time. Maybe it's Australia
yeah.
because it's dinner time here.
Mhm.
It's in Queensland where I am. It's
Well,
6 o'clock. and it's
Oh, I'm
7 o'clock in
sorry. We
Sydney.
have a guest waiting. I just now noticed that. Do we want to take it? Do
Yeah,
we, or
let's
you
take
have the
it.
next timer?
I can go over. I can
Say,
go over.
okay. Oh, the
Okay.
guest has left. My bad. So anyway, so false alarm. But if
Oh
you want
well.
to join, just you'll see if you can go to Insight Timer Live or my website, Integrating Presence. You can look and join next time and ask, and we can take calls from Wisdom App too. And we had 10 or so people join from Wisdom App too. So, all right, guys. And you're welcome to reach out ahead of time and ask questions too, or share anything you'd like with Wendy or I for the next one coming up. It'll be up. I'll announce it soon. So,
Yeah, and I want to say, for if you are lonely at on Valentine's Day and you feel a bit shit about being single, I spend a lot of time being single, so
same
I
here.
totally get it.
Most of my
And
life,
it's a shitty time, you know. It's the biggest high suicide rate. Um, it's one of the high suicide rates days, definitely. So be kind to yourself. Um, you know, just if you can't love anybody else, just love yourself.
yes, and I
Yeah.
mean, if we're going to bring a little bit of wisdom, realize it is a commercial holiday, or at least it has been commercialized. So there's a lot of money involved, and that's to me. I mean, that's great if that's there, but that's not what this is all about. Commercializing it, right? In my opinion, anyway,
Yeah.
that's how I feel. So,
It was a card, you know.
yeah,
It's an Irish thing, I think, and it's just
is
it
it?
was a card. It was a very sweet gesture to say, oh, you
Mhm.
know, I like this person, and yeah, it wasn't the multi-million dollar rose industry that it's become. I shouldn't think that we'll do anything. In fact, I have a feeling I'm getting up at 7 o'clock to do a podcast interview. And I'm probably going to go to bed at 8 o'clock. So, it doesn't matter whether I'm in a relationship or not. I just kind of don't really celebrate it. So there you go. All right. Well, I'm gonna go because it's time.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks, Wendy, and thank you all for listening in and joining, and all the best to you, and encouragement for your Brahmavihara practice, and we can aspire at least to less ill will, practical
Oh
steps
yeah,
and practicing.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
For
Totally.
ourselves and
All right.
others. Yep.
Absolutely. All
All
right
right.
then.
Bye now.
Bye everyone.